Hi and welcome to Lois and Morgana Davidson Art. It's Lois here, and today I'm in the studio and I'm going to spend a few hours just practicing skies. So I've filmed one for you. I shall be painting it using the wet on dry method to start with this time. I usually paint wet in wet, but sometimes I like to change things up. So today my sky practice is going to be trying to paint a storm and building up layers of intense colour, but still keeping it light and fresh and keeping enough unpainted paper for the lightest lights in a seascape. I'm using up the paint in my palette from a painting I did yesterday, so I've just given the paint a quick spray or quick spritz with a water spray to wet it up and get it ready for painting and squeeze out a bit of fresh paint. I'm using burnt sienna, raw sienna, Payne's grey, indigo, sepia and some cobalt turquoise, which you've just seen me put across the horizon line for just to try and establish the lightest part of the sky. And now I'm going to establish the darkest parts with really rich, almost tube consistency paint onto the dry page. I'll sweep it across the page and then spray the painting with some water and then begin to tip and tilt so that the water and paint runs, and that way I can sort of move the paint around on the page, keeping the passages of paint really fresh and interesting and hopefully intense. I'm using a 1/4 imperial sheet of Milford brand cotton watercolour paper, cold pressed texture, and I've got my board at an angle of about 20 degrees. I will pick the board up and tip and tilt it very shortly though, just watching the paint and encouraging it to flow in the directions that I want it to. So I've managed to get the paint moving around really nicely in the sky, and I've laid my board flat because I don't want the paint to run anymore. I just want it to settle out and dry as it is. I'm just going to take a flat brush now and put a little bit more tone, some mid-value, into the landscape, which is my beach. Not too much, just a small amount. Today the sky is the star. I'm not too worried about the beach. I will add a bit more to that later once the sky has dried to give it some context. And while the paper is wet from that sweep of paint that I put across there earlier, any paint that I put in now will softly diffuse, and it'll give me a nice base for a tide line or water line for my beach when I come to finish the painting off once it's dried completely. So now I'm just going to let the painting dry completely. I might check on it, make sure the water isn't pooling up too much in one place or another, as this will create or could create cauliflower marks if the paint dries unevenly. And I can just simply tilt the page or just spray a little bit of water in the area that's drying out too quickly, just to even things up. So the sky wash has dried and I'm really happy with that. It's got that fresh spontaneity but the intensity that I was looking for. I'm now just going to play around with the paint on my palette and just create a little bit of sea and bring a bit more value and texture into the beach. And I think I'm happy with that. I always try and stop before I think it's finished. I'm thinking of that maybe it needs some birds or some more detail on the beach, but I try and hold myself back from that because very often that can lead to overworking, and these sky practices are all about getting used to learning when to stop. Once it's completely dry, then I can sort of think about whether I want to add any more to it. But at the moment, it, I think, is where I want it to be. And so I shall leave it. Just before the paint dries, though, I think I'm going to just use the palette knife and just add a little bit of texture to the mid-ground beach. I'm happy with the foreground, I'm happy with the background, the headland. But just if I can scrape a little tiny bit of texture, so that I get that little bit of variety, not too much, but just enough to stop that mid-ground beach from looking too boring. And that's fine, I'm going to leave it there. Well, I'm going to get on now and do a few more sky practices. I'm going to squeeze out some slightly different colours, and being inspired by this one, I'm going to take this experiment further and see what I can come up with. And that's the most fun part of being an artist for me, are these times when I can just go into the studio and experiment and play and just explore the medium of watercolour and see what it can do for me. Well, I hope that was helpful. Please leave us a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And thank you so much to everyone that supports this channel on Patreon. We couldn't run this channel without you, and if you'd like to support the channel, then please follow the links below. I'll see you again soon. Take care and happy painting. Bye.